What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to Days of Future Present, the next crossover that we are going to talk about. Now, today's video, we're going to wrap up our coverage over Judgement War. It was an 8-part story arc that took place over in X-Factor Comics. You see, when it came to X-Factor, they had traveled across the universe, and the reason why, because of their spaceship, better known as Ship. The ship was actually called over, really forced over to the other side of the universe by a group of Celestials. Now, in our last video, we had learned a tad bit about the origin of the ship. We learned that it was actually created by the Celestials, but we have no idea why it was created by them. Now, when it comes to our heroes, you see, after traveling across the universe, you didn't have our heroes be teleported to a nearby planet while the ship stuck around with the Celestials. Now, when it came to our heroes, when they had arrived on this planet, they realized there is a war going on between two different groups, the Chosen and the Rejects. Now, when it comes to the Chosen, they look just like us. Human beings. But here's the catch. They want to be perfect. And so they realize that natural childbirth is the wrong way to go, because you cannot control if the child comes out perfect or not. And so they begin to use science as a way to create the next generation to make sure that they are actually perfect. Now, when it comes to the Rejects, they look deformed because of their genetics. And so when it comes to the Chosen, they feel like the Rejects should be killed off or basically just leave the entire world because they look deformed. They're not perfect. They look hideous. And so there has been a war between these two groups for a while. But because of this war, you now have Celestials wondering, should this world survive in the universe? Because this world has already been tested 4 times by the Celestials, and all 4 times they have passed. But now on their 5th test, we see they have completely changed since their last test because of this war. Now, in our last video, we had discussed that different members of X-Factor were currently prisoners for the two groups. So, for example, when it came to Jean Grey, she was a prisoner for the Rejects because she looked like a Chosen. She looked normal. Now, when it came to the Rejects, they were going to use her in some kind of exchange to hopefully get back their people from the Chosen and then hand her over to the Chosen as a fair trade. Now, in our last video, we had also discussed that when it came to Jean Grey, she has some personality issues at the moment. You see, thanks to Inferno, she had absorbed the mind of Madeline Pryor, but also absorbed a small part of the Phoenix power as well. And so because of that, in her body right now, in her mind, she has 3 different personas just fighting for control over her body: Madeline, Phoenix, and Jean Grey. Now, in our last video, we saw Madeline Pryor slip out and try to attack the Rejects, but she was stopped. But now when it comes time for the exchange, we see the Phoenix come out. Now, like I said earlier, Jean Grey had only absorbed a small amount of the Phoenix. And so the Phoenix here is easily defeated by the Rejects and also the Chosen. Now, when it comes to Rask, he's actually one of the main characters we have to talk about in the story arc, because Rask is trying his best to take a role where he'll be in charge of all the Chosen in the territory of the Chosen. And so when it comes time for the exchange, he does accept Jean Grey because he believes that she is a Chosen, a powerful one, but he tells the Rejects, you cannot have Archangel back because he's my property, but I'll hand over a few other warriors that we have been holding on to for a while. Now, another character I want to remind you about is Princess Sarah. Now remember, Princess Sarah was originally created by the Chosen to be basically perfect, the most perfect version of themselves, to lead the Chosen in a new direction because how perfect she is. But then she realized that the Chosen are going at it the wrong way, how the world should properly work, with the idea the Chosen and rejects should be working together. Now, the only reason why she kind of realized this is all because of Archangel, because in our first video, he saved her life. But then you didn't have the Chosen go out of their way to attack him because they believed that he was a reject. And so while he's been a prisoner, she has been trying her best to free him, but to also free Iceman and also protect baby Christopher. Now, at the end of our last video, she was caught for going against her people. And so she was then kind of put in a position where she's now a prisoner, but now her goal is to break free and continue her work. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he had actually joined a third group, better known as the Beginning Gangs, and I really hope I pronounced their name correctly. Now, when it comes to Beginning Gangs, their main goal is to bring the Chosen and the Rejects together, to have both sides work together to hopefully change the minds of the Celestials. Now, when it came to Cyclops, once he got word that different members of his team is being held by the Chosen, he decided to go ahead and head a direction to save their lives. But here's the problem though. On the way there, they begin to see more and more Celestials begin to surround the actual city of the Chosen. And you have our heroes wondering, why are the Celestials coming to this planet and why are they watching this one particular area of the world? Now, when it comes to Sierra, she was able to actually free Archangel, but here's the catch. Rask had returned back to the prison to grab a few prisoners to hand over to the Rejects to finish their exchange. But of course, he just caught Sierra trying to free Archangel. Now, when it comes to Rask, he was able to take her down and Archangel down. But after doing that, we are then introduced to another character, and that would be Pollock. Now, when it comes to Pollock, he's kind of up there in the ranking with Rask when it comes to the different people in the Chosen territory. He's a high-ranking person, but he wants to know what in the world is going on with Sierra, and you have Rask inform him everything that has been going on with Sierra. But he does tell Pollock she needs to pay for the crimes that she had committed, and because she was trying to free Archangel, I got the perfect idea. You see, Archangel has a match coming up very soon in the arena where he has to fight against Iceman. If he is able to defeat Iceman, she'll live. But if he dies by the hands of Iceman, well, she also has to die as well. And Pollock agrees. Now, when it came to Beast, at first, he was able to easily hang out with the Rejects because he looked like one of them. But then they realized, or they began to feel like, that he was actually a spy. Because at first, they couldn't tell what tribe that he belonged to. Because one, he's not from that planet. But two, he pretended that he had some kind of amnesia. Now, when it came to Beast, once he heard that Jean Grey was a prisoner of the Rejects, and she was going to be used as a trade in the exchange, you didn't have Beast try to protect her. But when he did that, the people of the Rejects looked at Beast as a traitor, as a spy of the Chosen. Why would he go out of his way to protect someone who looks like a Chosen? And so they threw him in prison. Now, Beast is able to break free in this section, but while trying to get away, he's then confronted by Agram. Now, Agram was the opponent of Archangel in our last video when it came to Archangel's first battle in the arena. Now, that is really important here. And the reason why, because as soon as Agram came back to the Rejects, thankfully being exchanged for Jean Grey, he hears that Beast, a prisoner, is trying to get away. He stops Beast, but then once he finds out that Beast is actually friends with Archangel, he understands that Beast is not a bad guy. That Beast is one, a good guy, and two, Beast is not from this world. And so now Beast is cleared. He's once again loved by the Rejects thanks to Agram. Now, getting back over to Jean Grey, you see, after the exchange, Jean Grey is now with the Chosen, and now their goal is to figure out who the heck she is and how powerful she is. Now, while transporting her, they do walk by Christopher, the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. Now, when it comes to Christopher, he does believe that he is seeing Jean Grey, who also looks like Madeline Pryor. But again, Jean Grey has some personality issues at the moment. So as soon as she walks by Christopher, she then switches over to Madeline Pryor, who tries to get close to her son again, but in the body of Jean Grey. But then you have Christopher being able to put up a force field around himself as a way to protect himself from Madeline, because to him, that's not the person he wants to be with. It's Jean Grey that he wants to be with. Now, when it comes to Iceman, in our last video, we had talked that he is technically a prisoner of the Chosen, but not really. Let me explain. So because Iceman has a human form and an ice form, he is called a dueler on this world. There are other people who are just like him, but they're not really loved by the people of the Chosen, but at the same time, they're still accepted by the people of the Chosen. And let me explain why. So because of their human form, they're okay. But as soon as they change over to their other forms, like Iceman ice form, they're looked at as a monster. Now, Iceman has some memories issues at the moment. He lost all his memories. He has no idea who he is or how in the world he got here. And so he truly believes that he's part of this world, and he's also a dueler. Now I want to shift our focus over to the ship. Now in our last video, we had talked about the idea the ship was actually created by the Celestials a long time ago. But here's the thing though, when it comes to the ship, it's actually not your normal aircraft. It's being controlled by an AI system. We did learn that in our last video, it was created by the Celestials, not by Apocalypse. And it thought it was created by Apocalypse and being controlled by Apocalypse. But now knows it was created by the Celestials and was used as to gather data on the world it was placed on. And of course, that would be Earth. It was sent to Earth to watch over the human beings, to collect data on the humans, and then send that data over to the Celestials. Now, when it comes to the ship, it realized that a bunch of Celestials are now heading down to the planet to watch what could be the final battle between the rejects and the Chosen. Now I want to shift our focus over to Iceman because he's then confronted by another character known as Lev. Now when it comes to Lev, she's kind of like Iceman. She has a human form, but she also has a flame form, very similar to the Human Torch. Now when it comes to Lev, she does inform Iceman that his next opponent is going to be Archangel, and he has to win. Now when it comes to Iceman, he's not really down with the idea of killing anybody. Now this is not him saying, oh, you know, I don't want to kill Archangel because he's my friend. Remember, he does not remember anything at the moment. It's just him saying, I don't feel like killing people to please the Chosen. Now, when it comes to Iceman, he's then down with the idea, once you have Lev inform Iceman, that if he's able to win and continue to do what he has done so far for their people, sooner or later, their people are going to stand up against the Chosen, all because of what Iceman has been doing in a short period of time on this planet. Now, when it comes to the rejects, they are being led by Agram and Beast as they are sneaking into the main city of the Chosen. Now, on their way there, you do have Beast run into Cyclops. And so now we are beginning to see the different members of X Factor being able to regroup with one another. Now, when it comes to Beast and Cyclops, they are now going to work together to free the others, especially when it comes to Iceman and Archangel, who are about to fight against one another in the next match in the arena. But now we have to jump over to Archangel, who's then brought over to Palak. Now, when it comes to Palak, he hates the idea of Rask being able to take over the Chosen territory. Let me explain. So when it comes to Archangel, he is property that is actually owned by Rask. every single time Archangel wins a battle in the arena, all the money from all the different bets will then go over to Rask. And so for Palik, he knows if Archangel is able to win the next battle against Iceman, all that money will then allow Rask to be easily take over the chosen territory. And so when it comes to Palik, he says, I cannot allow that. I hate the idea of Rask being in charge. And so you have Palik say, I am going to partially blind you. And that will allow Iceman to win against you. If Iceman wins, I get everything I want. You'll be dead, Syrah will also be dead, and Rask will not be able to take over the chosen territory. Now, when it comes to Palik, he knows if Iceman wins, the duelers are going to celebrate like no other because they are technically second class in this territory. With this victory, they'll try to push to become first class. And so when it comes to Palik, he says, oh, don't worry. When we do an autopsy on you, we're going to say that the duelers actually cheated to allow Iceman to win, to remind them that their place is second to us. Now, there was a dueler that was hiding in the cell with Archangel, and so he was able to listen in on what Palik is trying to do. This dueler has the ability to shrink down in size, and so once he hears everything from Palik, he runs over to Lev to tell Lev to stop Iceman before he enters the next battle, because if he does, it's going to lead into a bunch of different problems. But the problem is, Iceman had just entered the arena and now he's fighting against Archangel. Now, I want to jump over to Apocalypse just real quickly because the last 3 chapters, really the last 2 chapters of Judgement War are also tie-ins for Acts of Vengeance, another Marvel event that was going on around this time that we are currently covering on my channel. When it comes to Acts of Vengeance, the whole idea was that a mysterious character appeared and he realized that the reason why different villains are always losing to heroes because they keep going after the same heroes. And so he told the different villains, why not go after other heroes that you don't usually fight against? Because if you do that, most likely they cannot defeat you because they have no idea how to defeat you. And so you had different members of villains join this new Acts of Vengeance group, like the Kingpin, Doctor Doom, the Wizard, Magneto, Red Skull, and the list goes on. But it seems like somebody is trying to recruit Apocalypse, and most likely it's the same mysterious character I was just talking about. Now we do get one page, just one quick page of the ship, realizing that it's not going to stay under the control of the Celestials. It's now going to do what it wants to do, meaning that it's no longer going to try to obey the orders of the Celestials. Instead, it's now going to go out of its way to head towards that planet to save its friends. Of course, talking about X Factor, to get them off that planet before the Celestials decide to blow it up. Now, getting back over to the battle between Iceman and Archangel, you have the two characters just fighting against each other. Now remember, Iceman does not remember who he is, and so he's trying to fight to the death. Is Archangel trying to fight to survive? Now you do have Beast and the Rejects being able to jump into the middle of the battle. Now this is a huge no-no because now the battle is technically ruined. That means all bets are off the board. They all have been void. And so when it comes to Rask, that means he is now unable to win any kind of money from this battle. Now when it comes to Rask, he's very upset about this, but he still wants to kill Lost Syrah, which he tries to do. Now, here's the thing though, because Lev also got informed about what Palik was trying to do, but she's also trying to protect Iceman, the man she loves, and she wants Iceman to remember who he is. And so you have Lev being able to save Syrah from being killed off by Rask, but then inform Syrah to use her abilities to restore the mind of Iceman to make him remember. And bam, just like that, Iceman is back to normal. X Factor is able to now work together to hopefully bring down this entire empire that the Chosen have built. Now, the last page of this book, we do see Apocalypse once again, except this time he's then confronted by our mysterious character. And you have our mysterious character trying to recruit Apocalypse to join in on the Acts of Vengeance event. And the question is, will Apocalypse actually join? Because if he did, most likely he'll be able to take down a different character in Marvel Comics very easily, because how powerful Apocalypse truly is. But now we must enter the final chapter for this story arc, and we pick up with a big battle taking place in the arena. You have different members of the Chosen, the Rejects, and X Factor just fighting against one another. But I want to shift our focus over to Rask and also Palak. Now this is the moment where you have Rask realize that Palak did plan most of this, not all of it, but just enough to make sure that Rask will not become the next ruler over the Chosen territory. Because to Palak, Rask is not the right choice, because Rask is not actually perfect. You see, when it comes to Rask, when he was created or born, he had a birthmark. And so when it came to the Chosen, they looked at that birthmark as a reason to say he is not perfect. He is actually defected. We should get rid of him. But he used his money as a way to have the people forget that he had a birthmark, so that he could pretend that he is almost perfect as Syrah. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he's leading another group of people who are trying to cut the power supply to the Chosen arena in their entire city. But he's also trying to find Jean Grey and his son Christopher. Now, they do find a robot that did belong to Syrah, and with the robot, they are able to learn where Jean Grey and also Christopher are being held at, but also getting a map to where the power supply is also at as well, and also any kinds of traps that could possibly slow them down. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he's able to find Jean Grey and Christopher. Now, at first, he goes to save his son, then goes to save Jean Grey. But here comes the problem. You see, Jean Grey is still having a personality problem at the moment, where you do have Cyclops being able to free Jean Grey, but once she starts talking, she's talking like the Phoenix, and that scares Cyclops. But then she changes over to Madeline Pryor, and that also scares Cyclops. Now you have Cyclops begin to try to talk to Jean Grey to bring out the right personality, the right persona, and he's able to bring her out. But the problem is right now, how long will that last? Is there still a possibility that Madeline or the Phoenix might be able to completely take over the mind and body of Jean Grey? But now we have to jump back over to the battle between Rask and also Archangel. Now remember, Archangel is still blinded, partially blinded, thanks to Palak from earlier. And so when it comes to their battle, Rask actually has the upper hand at the moment. Now, there is another character I do want to talk about, and that would be Daikon. Daikon belongs to the third group, the Beginning Games. And when it comes to Daikon, he's fighting against Palak. But as their battle goes on, he also gets blinded by Palak. Now, Daikon is still able to get close to Palak, and matter of fact, he's about to kill him off. But then he is stopped by Syrah, and she says if you kill him, he cannot restore your sight nor Archangel's sight. And so you have Daikon say, you better restore my sight or I'm still going to kill you. And so you then have Archangel being able to regain his sight completely, but then you have Archangel go out of his way to stab Rask with a bunch of his knives wings or knives from his wings to do some serious damage to Rask. But now it's time for us to get into the big moment, and that would be Arisheim. Arisheim is the main celestial that is going to judge this world. And so here's the thing, because once he does arrive, everybody stops and they realize that they are about to be judged. Now you have all different group leaders tell their people, we have to work together. We have to prove that we have the right to survive here, because if we don't, we're dead. And that's really it. Now, you do have the leader of Begin Against go over to Jean Grey to tell Jean Grey, you may be the key that will allow us to win this battle, by saying you have the power of the Phoenix inside of you. And he's right, because remember, back in Inferno, when it came to Madeline Pryor, she was only brought to life completely by the powers of the Phoenix, a small portion of the power of the Phoenix. And so when Jean Grey had absorbed the mind of Madeline Pryor, she also absorbed that small power of the Phoenix as well. And so for Jean Grey, they're telling her, you can literally help us by using the power of the Phoenix. And once you do, we should be able to win. Now, when it comes to Jean Grey, she does begin to use a small power of the Phoenix she has left inside of her as a way to attack the main celestial, Archangel. Now, when it comes to Jean Grey, she is not on his level, especially because she only has a small portion of the power of the Phoenix inside of her. But you have Cyclops being able to use his optic beam. And so once he does that, she takes his energy and her energy and combine them together to at least blow up the hand of Archangel. And so with his hand gone, you have all the celestial decide, you know what? Maybe they do have the right to survive. They were able to fix their errors. They were able to begin to work together. And with that happening, we are going to leave. And so just like that, X Factor, really Jean Grey, had saved this planet from being destroyed. Now, when it comes to our heroes, it's now time for them to head back over to Earth, their home. And so on their way home, they do pass a spaceship, but that spaceship actually belongs to Eleandra, the leader of the Shi'ar Empire. And let's not forget, when it came to Charles Xavier, he left the X-Men behind to go be with her in space. And so when it comes to our heroes, when they pass their spaceship, you have Charles being able to detect their minds, to realize that his original X-Men were nearby. Now, it was only a brief moment. And so when he calls out for them, Eleandra is very confused, because to her, all of his students are back on Earth. There is no way that the original X-Men were actually here. But she did not look outside to see that a spaceship had passed by and X Factor was on that spaceship. Now, the very last section of the book really goes back over to Apocalypse, because you now have Apocalypse meeting with our mysterious character. We kind of find out that it is actually Loki. Yes, you heard that right. Loki is our mysterious character who has been recruiting different villains for acts of vengeance. And so when it comes to Apocalypse, he already knew it was Loki. Now, when it comes to Apocalypse, he declines the request that Loki gave him to join the acts of vengeance, because Apocalypse says, I know what you're doing here. You have all those other villains believing that they are in charge, but in reality, you are in charge. You are using them to accomplish a goal, which is to get rid of all the heroes who have standing your way. And you knew if you had told them that you were in charge, they would not fall in line. And so you gave them that ability to be in charge. And listen, I will not be tricked like they are. And so you have Apocalypse decline the request. Now, Loki does get very upset and tries to attack Apocalypse. But Apocalypse has Caliban, one of his followers, protect him from the attack of Loki. And once Loki realized that Caliban Apocalypse is just too much for him to handle, he does retreat. But he does tell Apocalypse that this is not over. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.